Uh, is there a need to rebrand Nigeria? It's actually, if in my industry, it's a very hot topic. Sometimes when I think a couple of years ago, the government tries to do the rebranding project, and then there was missiles flying all over the room, or who has eaten a piece of the cake and who deserves to take on the project. So it's always a big thing. But whether we like it or not, a nation continues to evolve, right? And branding, I don't want to sound too academic, is not, if you want to describe it practically, it's not about who you say you are. Okay, we have Honorable Akin Alabi here. He can come here and the MC and everybody can pump him up and say this and that. But when he's not there, who do people say he is? That is his real brand. What he's telling us about himself is just pure advertising and marketing, right? But who people say he is, what they say about him when he's not in the room, that's his true brand. And for every brand builder is to be able to probe that brand and say, okay, what are the brand health indices of brand A? What are the positive? What are the negatives? How can we tweak it? Because like I said, Nigeria is probably one of the most maligned nations in the world. Both the ones that we've done and the ones that we've not done, everything comes on Nigeria, right? But then, it's interesting to see that a young person like Wizkid can sell out the O2 Arena 3 days back to back. At some point, people were asking, all those people who attended the concert, don't they go to work in London? He shut down someone else's country. That is brand building in action. You see, what Wizkid and Burna Boy and Davido are doing for this country on a daily basis, you cannot put Naira or USD to it in terms of nation building. Because remember when we used to grow up, the dominant culture of the world was the American culture, the black American culture. Everybody wanted to be like a hip-hop artist. We are not seeing what's going on now, but there's a quiet seismic shift happening in the global arena today, and I see into the nearest future, the biggest and dominant and hegemonic culture of the youth going into the future, I can predict that it's going to be Nigerian. Because musicians are actively copying that Afrobeat sound. I'm talking about white musicians, I'm not even talking about black brothers in America. So today, this nation, whether the government wants it or not, is a nation rebranding itself as we speak. Thank you. The truth is, it's a big challenge, right? Huge country. We know all the numbers of how many they say we are. Maybe 200 million, maybe less, who knows. But if you go across the world and you just take a cursory look, just take a panoramic look of what has happened in the past traditionally, how have countries branded themselves? India is maybe how many times bigger than Nigeria? Several times. They manage, and of course it's the same multi-religious, multilingual, and it's the same kind of system. Huge poverty rate, disparity between the rich and the poor. It's almost like Nigeria is almost like a miniature India if you look at it somehow. But they came up with this very interesting campaign called the Incredible India campaign back then, a couple of years ago. You saw it on CNN. And Incredible India, it tells you about all of the incredible things like the Taj Mahal and all the other things, all the tourist things that you can see. But what makes our own case peculiar is that, like Honorable Akin Alabi rightly said, if I sit down with my team today and say, let's come up with a campaign for Brand Nigeria, it won't take us more than a couple of days. We'll come up with something, we'll put it on CNN. But if I say, come to Yankari Games Reserve, are you going to go by air or by road or by rail? If some people are trying to blow up the rail, and some people are trying to kidnap the tourists on the way to the site. So those are the deficits, those are the brand deficits that we have. But I say, if I look at the Nigerian brand, I look beyond the physical and the attributes and the nomenclature, I look at the spirit and the essence of our people. I think that is ultimately, if we ever arrive at any branding destination, that will probably form the crux, the nugget of all of the ideas we're going to build on. You know, there's something they say on the street. When push comes to shove, you hear, we die here. See, because when you want to talk about the meek and the weak, not too many of us in this country qualify. Because for those of us left here, there's a level of ruggedness that keeps us here. This place is not for the faint-hearted. The guys who are already faint-hearted have already relocated. So those of us talk here, that street lingo is we die here. Because either by force or by chance, we're here. I'll give you a little bit of my story. I started advertising in 1995. I was a 24-year-old skinny little guy, came in from Kaduna. I grew up in the north, Speak Hausa, Right Hausa, and finished my degree in theatre arts in the Ahmadu Bello University, and I decided to go into advertising. And it occurred to me from my research. I used to walk from my home in Bagarua Road in Costain Quarters to the Cardinal Library, then quite a distance, just to research, because 1995 was not like 2021 where you can Google anything. You just go to the library and research. And I found that 99.9% of all of the advertising agencies in Nigeria are in Lagos. So I made up my mind. On my 24th birthday, I told myself, this sun that has risen in this cardinal will not set and meet me in this town. I'm out of here. I came, took my bag, came in through Benin, spent some time with my friends in Benin, drank a couple of beers, bought beers for each other, and I ended up landing here June 8, 1995. No money in my pocket, nowhere to stay. I promise you, it's that same spirit that kept on pushing me. We die here. You know, and I used to wake up, I tell myself, I look at myself in the mirror every morning, and I said, before I leave this town and not be successful, the Baba-eko will run dry. That was what I used to tell myself every morning. And I kept at it. I got my first job at MC and Sachi back then. And 5 years there as a copywriter, moved on to Ogilvy in 2000, another 5 years. Got seconded to be the pioneer creative director of 141 in 2005, which is where I met Anir Khan. And then in 2012, I don't know what I was smoking, I set up my own agency. And let's be honest, in the past 9 years, Extreme Ideas has become the dominant force in advertising in Nigeria, because the same mantra that drove me to come to Lagos is still the same mantra that drives me today. We die here. You know, and now, apart from surviving and having become the #1 agency in the country, even if I say so myself, we expanded a couple of years ago. Now we're in 3 other African countries. We're in South Africa, we're in Lusaka, Zambia, still counting. We have thank you. So, and my story is just one, my story is by not any stretch of the imagination is not the most fascinating story in this country. It's just one of other stories. I'm sure there are people in this audience today who will share their own personal story with us, and it will knock my socks off. So if I'm going to put a bet on Brand Nigeria, I'll put it on the spirit of the people. The government, as much as the SA says we shouldn't separate ourselves, the government has done so much self-sabotaging to itself in terms of not being able to connect with the people, you know, and it's about the people who end up representing us in government, okay? Look at, this country has perhaps one of the youngest population in the world, with over 60% of the population under 25. And then you want to appoint people who are going to represent us in government, and by some formula, majority of those people are so old and so out of touch with the majority of the people they are supposed to be leading. There's no way there's going to be an alignment. So for the people who are young, who are so despondent and so hopeless today, there's a reason for it. And in doing all of those brand inventory to say, how are we going to auto-correct going forward into the future, looking at all of those issues, how can we correct? How can we fix those situations? How can we get the right people in the right places that can connect with, because you see, you cannot be connecting with young people and you're speaking the language of the old. There are certain things I see the government do sometimes. I feel like just fainting on their behalf, because see, they've set up a low-hanging ball for you to just use to score. You know, when they just, why Nigerians were so upset with Yakubu was they set the ball for you. All he needed to do, just use his nyash to just set and touch the ball a little bit, it's inside the goal. Nigerians, there's nothing they hate more than missed opportunity. There are certain things that happens, like the NSAS, for instance. Whatever happened has happened. Very, very sad and unfortunate. A government comes out, all you need to do, own up, take responsibility, make restitution, embrace the young population. You cannot erase the people you are supposed to be ruling. So in all of those aspects, if you check our agric, if you check the business, if you check entertainment, most of the most successful aspects of our economy are the ones where government has nothing to do with it. I invested in music. I invested on artists like Simi Praise. The government has not given the music industry one single kobo, but Wizkid and Burna Boy are shutting venues all over the world. How did we get here? Let the people who know how to do these things do their job, and then we'll have a better country, I assure you. Just to round up, I'll say, whether there is constituency allowance or not, and this is directly to Honorable Akin-Alabi, I think one thing that we must leave this room totally agreed upon is that the cost of governance in Nigeria is extra high, and that cost is actually not sustainable into the future. And that's why you see that everybody is angry, everybody is feeling the pinch. That's why in Nigeria, you talk anyhow, you see anyhow. The young people are really incensed, and rightly so too. You know, so if the way we are running this country today, if it was a company, it will be under receivership already. Have no doubt about it, because we are spending way much more money than we can earn. But having said that, I think once we agree on that, whether the House of Rep or the senators are the ones taking all the money, we can then begin to address all of the issues about what goes to where, on what occasion, and in whose name and in whose constituency. But having said that, I think the question of Nigeria and the brand Nigeria is actually beyond Nigeria. My final thought will be the question of Nigeria is the question of Africa. If Nigeria is able to get it right, then Africa will be okay. But if Nigeria fails, God forbid bad thing, because I love this country and I'm sure we all do, then Africa is doomed. By far the biggest economy in this on this continent, over 400 billion GDP. Look at all of the mineral resources and all of the deposits. Most of the fracas we have here and there, somehow we have, people say it's tied to resources and whatever, resources allocation. But as a continent, we still don't contribute more than 2% to world trade. 60% of the arable land in the world is in Africa. 60%. So all of the cocoa we're selling to make all of those chocolates, a country like Belgium, which is in terms of ratio, is not any bigger than Shomolu in Lagos, is making all of the money from chocolate. Meanwhile, our farmers are breaking their backs here and growing cocoa. 60% of the arable land in the world is in Africa, and 2% is what we contribute. Like one high commissioner recently, if we are able to move the needle of our global contribution to world trade from 2 to 3%, that's going to be about $70 billion annually for this continent. And like I rightly said, the future of this country and on this continent, and of this continent, belongs to the majority of the young people in this room and in this country and on this continent, period. And that's what we must invest on. And regarding Western media, they will continue to highlight our weak points and our weaknesses. The more they highlight our weak points, the responsibility belongs to us to continue to shout what we think are our strengths. Like Barack Obama's wife, Michelle Obama, said, when they go low, we shall continue to go high, and so shall it be.